For my new subscribers, body language is the whole body. When analyzing and coming to a conclusion, you should see multiple tells to verify your conclusion. I don't always point out every movement. It's just habit for me at this point. But I am making a conscious effort to point them out. The eyes don't always say deception. A visual thinker, an emotional thinker, and a memory-based thinker can look like a deceiver when compared to each other, when they are not. The eyes are a good tool for seeing which area of the brain is being accessed. There is very good research on the brain for function and mapping. Understand by their own admittance, they are far from mapping or understanding the entire brain. Remember to go check out Patreon. We're doing John F. Kennedy today, and the request was for his secret society speech, but there's no visual on that. All I'm finding is audio. So we're just going to look at what a normal, mentally healthy leader looks like. It has some throwback to the way life used to be in America, the healthy life. So let's get started. This is the last vacation before he was assassinated, and the family is outside waiting for the helicopter to land. This day, the entire family would come out and wait. There wasn't the rules and regulations. Well, there's safety. You need to be half a mile away in case the helicopter spins out of control and everyone dies. Oh, look, that makes sense. Let's do that. Well, it also makes sense to never walk in case you fall down and bump your head. Coming off the plane, this is my favorite president as far as who they were, John F. Kennedy. Look, instantly goes in. He sees his son running towards him. A happy dad. Not the uptight, can't show any emotion. The cameras are there, or somebody might see. And of course, now we see him greeting his wife. And what gets me or strikes me for this day is back then, or maybe it's just the way the situation is, but it's just a very much relaxed posture. The shoulders aren't stiffened, the back isn't straightened up. It's very proper family, so we don't see bad posture, but it's a much more open mindset between the two of them. You just don't see this family dynamic anymore when you look at politicians and elites. It's very scripted and very posed, whereas you see it's an intermingling. If I didn't point these people out to you, you never knew who they were other than the fact of what they're wearing, and the people are gravitating towards the newcomers. You wouldn't necessarily see who was the head of the family. He's got greetings. He has greetings. These two are talking with each other. And President Kennedy, still with his wife, speaking with her. But the family is intermingling with all the new members that have come home. They're not gravitating strictly to the president for that mentality of, let's make him happy, he can do things for me. It's an equal distribution of affection. I guess what we're not seeing here is the ass kisser. And even in today's families, as far as politicians, there always seems to be ass kissers involved. They surround themselves with ass kissers. Yes men. The families they want around them are ass kissers. Have I said that word enough? This is while JFK was a senator, and it is shortly after he and Jackie got married.
Let's go and meet the newlyweds. Are you there, Senator?
Yes, right here, Mr. Morrow.
Good evening, sir.
Thank you.
Good evening, Mrs. Kennedy.
Good evening.
I understand that the two of you had a very much publicized courtship. How did the two of you meet?
They're very nervous. TV wasn't as prevalent as it is in today's society. And to boot, the interviewer and the interviewees are not even in the same room. So they're dealing with new technology. It would be like giving somebody a smartphone that used to have to pick up a line and tell somebody to dial a number for them.
We met at the house
And you see her nervousness. She leaned in to speak to where the speaker was so they could hear her.
of a friend about 2 years ago.
And you used to be a reporter, didn't you?
Yes, I did.
And you first met the senator when you interviewed him.
Well, I interviewed
And she's trying to get closer to that microphone. Poor thing.
him shortly after I met him.
Well, now, which requires the most diplomacy? To interview senators or to be married to one?
Well, I
Being
think
married to one, I guess.
Well, have you opened all your wedding gifts?
And they're both kind of nervous. He's dancing with his legs, playing with his fingers.
well, I've opened quite a few of them, and I've sent them all to Washington. We just have a couple back here.
Aha. Senator, I wonder if you would show us around your apartment a bit?
Certainly will. Fine tomorrow.
Now, obviously, this is an interview of a politician. And more than likely, even back then, they went over what the spiel was going to be. So he had plenty of time to set up his apartment for this interview. And she knew where her role was and to do it.
This, I remember when you were over in England, and I thought you might remember this picture that was taken when my...
But back then, apparently, as I'm sitting there telling you this, they didn't try and hide that aspect of what an interview was. He set it up. I remembered back then, this is a picture, and he goes on to explain this picture, that he purposely put it there for this reason.
family were all over there in 1939 when my father was ambassador.
Oh, I remember it very well. There he is in the center, isn't he?
Yes, that's right, and I have my 8 brothers and sisters. That's almost...
That's when they had families. When there was more than just one kid. Get your 2.2 kids. No, there's 8 of them. When the mind was healthy, when you had people to lean on. Family.
The last time we were all taken together, and brings back happy memories.
Well, Senator, you had some rather anxious moments yourself during the war, didn't you?
Yes, I did.
You were in PT boats, weren't you?
Yes, I was during the Solomon Islands.
Now, the way he walks, he is nervous, and not in the sense of he's a weak person. It is literally just this avenue of technology that is, we're on TV. I don't want to look like an idiot. He's playing with his hands. And the more I watched him, he reminds me of someone today. And I'll tell you at the very end of this video who I think he reminds me of. And you guys can make up your own minds.
The campaign, we worked off of, first off of Tulagi and then off the Rendover and the...
And he's dancing. He can't help but he has to keep moving. He can't sit still. He's got to dance.
New Georgia Island, and then finally up close to Bella La Bella towards the end of 1943.
Is that a model of your PT boat there?
Yes, it is. That was made over at by some friends of mine over at the Boston Navy Yard. The PT on which I was on, PT 109, was cut in two while we were attacking a Jap destroyer on August 2nd, 1943, and we more or less hit head on. At least he hit over through here and cut through to the end of the boat and proceeded, unfortunately, on his way. We, after about 6 or 7 days, we landed on Nauru Island and ran into a native.
And the dancing is getting much wider in its sway. And it's becoming more rhythmical. So he's becoming more comfortable, but he just wants to dance.
And We gave him a coconut and with a message written on it, which he took back to Rendover. When I got back to Rendover a couple of days later, I picked up.
Touching this coconut and his closeness to that PT boat, I think it was a PT boat that he was pointing at, is just a different aspect than we get today. He's very comfortable telling his story. He's very comfortable reliving his history.
Up the coconut, and I have it here in plastic, so it's pretty well shrunk up, but at least it reminds me of a
And of course he's smiling at
interesting experience.
Interesting. I should think that would be one of the great understatements. Senator, what's the picture just above the coconut there on the wall?
Well, that's a picture of the destroyer 850, which was named after my brother. He was after they landed at D-Day, the rocket emplacements, as you remember, were bothering the British, and they sent over some radar-controlled planes, which the pilot was supposed to bail out, and then the plane was to be guided into the target, the rocket emplacements, but the plane blew up too soon, and so this destroyer was named after him by the Navy. You might be interested to know, to prove that wars sometimes...
He really likes that coconut. He keeps going back to it. War is hell, especially today with the bad commanding that's in it. But back in his day, when you hear the stories, and my grandfather would tell me the stories, as ugly as it would get, the camaraderie that he had with his fellow soldiers and the stories that they enjoyed with each other, no matter how bad it was, those brought out happy memories. And that's what they hold on to.
Bring people together. During the campaign last summer, it was written up in Time magazine that I was running, and it mentioned our
And he is still dancing.
experience in the Solomons, and I got a letter about a month later from the commander of the Japanese destroyer, which ran us down, which turned out to be the Amagiri. He read, when I read the Time magazine of August 18th, 1952, which mentioned the battle in question, my memory being refreshed, I can vividly recall what happened at the time. He said, it was early in June 1943, I was transferred to Rabaul as the commander of the destroyer Amagiri. From that time, the counterattack of the American forces became increasingly offensive. In one of the night battles in August 1943, I sighted a bold enemy boat of small size was heading directly towards my destroyer of a larger type. Having no time to exchange gunfire, the ships came so close to each other, my destroyer had to directly hit the enemy boat, slicing it in two. To my great surprise, this boat happened to be the PT, which was under your command. And so that he sent me good wishes in the campaign, and I hope sometime if I ever go to Japan to meet him.
Well, Senator,
And he's generally, happy about this.
since we're talking about the last war, do you think we're ready for an all-out war now if another should come?
Well, I think that there is a great deal we have to do. I think, of course, the basic question in which we're now attempting to decide is whether we should attempt to build up and devote a great deal of our money to a strong continental defense system and a effective strategic
And it looks like his fingers are intertwined here, so he's gated,
air force, or whether really the best hope
but he keeps opening it up.
of survival rests in a air force second to none, with retaliatory powers that will be sufficient to force the Russians to hold their hand. Unfortunately, today,
And that down chin moment, I think he had a burp or something that he was trying to control.
I don't think we're doing either. And due to the stretch outs of 1952 and then again in 1953, in Air Force power, instead of having the 143 air groups that the Chief of Staff considered to be the minimum for our defense in 1954,
And listen to this rhetoric. I know it's not body language, but listen to what he's saying. We don't have the minimum 143, talking about the Air Force, for the defense of this country.
we're now only going to have 126 groups by the end of 1956. So that I don't think that a nation which is as rich and powerful as ours should be satisfied with anything less than an Air Force second to none. I don't think today we have it. In addition, I think we have a great deal to do in attempting to build up the strength in our Western European allies. And in addition, I don't think we should resign ourselves to the ultimate prospect of an atomic war, but should attempt to work out some arrangement, perhaps only through being so strong ourselves that we can avert it, because that will be the ruin of everything that is important in this country and all over the world.
He danced all the way through it. How smart our leaders were before. Listen to Jacqueline Kennedy. I just thought this is a little nugget that they read body language and just in everyday life.
Whenever Nehru gets bored with you, he taps his fingertips together and looks up at the ceiling. And Jack said he'd been there about 10 minutes when Nehru started to look up at the ceiling.
That's what we used to do. We used to read each other's body language and feed off of each other as human beings. And it's like we really have lost that. Now this will be the last part, but we got to bring in Jacqueline Kennedy's contribution as First Lady. The woman who in history no First Lady has ever been able to touch, is having the most class. She brought history, redecorated, and fixed the White House. This is before picture. That's the after picture. This is the before picture. This is the after picture. And then she gave a tour to the American people of what she did to the White House. Restored the damage, the neglect, brought pride back. Now this is a lady. He gave a great many speeches. Unfortunately, most of them were not televised. And if they were televised, a lot of them have gotten lost. I think this picture sums up his presidency. A whole lot of stress and constantly thinking about your next move. Back in the day when they weren't afraid to show their stress and they didn't walk around with a false smile on their face all the time, that it was okay to frown. Donald Trump reminds me of JFK. I told you he wasn't a Republican. If you like it, leave a like. If you like the content, please subscribe. Thanks for watching.